All right, looks like you're recording.
All right, we are calling to order the Board of Ethics February 16th, 2022 meeting. Madam Clerk, we have a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Goodstein. Mr. Goodstein?
Sorry? It's really glitching out on me.
Oh, you're here. This is just a roll call.
I'm here.
Mr. Goodstein is here. Thank
Okay.
you. Miss Allison.
Here.
Miss Wilson.
Here.
Miss Wint Pearson.
Here.
You have a full quorum.
All right, very good. And Jennifer, for the record, do we have anyone else here with us today?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Megan Carmichael is here from the Department of Law. Lisa Toussaint is here from the Department of Law. And then also Jamie Hines is here from the clerk's office. Just want to introduce you all to Jamie. She's our new Deputy Clerk of Elections, and she is also training to be my backup staffer for your board.
Okay, very good. Well, welcome. Thank you. Do we have any, let's see, any changes to the agenda? Anyone have any edits or changes they want to make to the agenda?
No.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, agenda is approved. We have no previous minutes, so let's take a look at our consent agenda. We have a few disclosure forms. I don't know if people had a chance to take a look. Why don't we take a minute here to look at those? I didn't see anything that gave me heartburn, but if as we go through, if people see something.
Yeah, I noticed that the Joe Zawadny, I wasn't saying that right, it's not signed.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
You might want to get a signature on that.
Yeah, Jennifer, could we request that Mr. Who is this? This is Joe Zelig, that Mr. Zawadny sign this form?
We certainly can, Mr. Chair, and just for the board's information, the clerk's office makes no judgment calls on forms that are submitted to you. We give them to you just as they are. I also noticed that, but we don't reach out to people that submit them until you tell us to, but I would be happy to do so.
Okay.
Can we approve it contingent upon execution so it doesn't come back to us next month? Or do we?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Can I ask you guys one question? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. My brain is getting ahead of where I should be. Sorry.
Well, I think that's the only disclosure I even see. So does anyone have any issues with that one?
Nope.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda then?
I would say approve with delegation for the clerk's office to secure that signature.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. All right, very good. So the consent agenda passes. That takes us on to our unfinished business.
Carrie, can I interrupt real quickly and just ask a quick question? And that is about, I think we had a couple of other disclosures that I didn't catch were not on this agenda. I assume we're just going to deal with those next month. I know we had one dealing with the superintendent, and her husband, I think, is the CEO and a part owner of ACS.
Yeah, I thought we had asked for confirmation of whether or not that one was moot.
Yes, correct.
And Megan, I thought that was assigned to you to follow up on whether or not we still needed to make a decision on that, or it was moot by virtue of the timing of the superintendent's departure.
It was mine, actually, to deal with.
Okay.
And I don't know, since it's not on the agenda, do we not deal with it? I actually did follow up on that. How do we handle that situation? Just deal with that at the next meeting? since it's.
That's a good question. I mean, like, I suppose.
You can move to
What-
amend this agenda to
sake, I mean, we could add it to the agenda, but is that a notice problem that matter was added to the agenda at the last minute? Notice problem, you think?
Well, I think if it negatively impacts someone's rights, yeah, but if the idea is that you're inclined to approve it, then I don't really see a problem with the notice. We would be notifying them that no conflict is found. Or
What do you
that the
Yeah.
disclosure was fine. You could do it either way. If it's not time sensitive, then why not wait till the next meeting, which is next month?
Lisa, yeah, what's your feeling? Time sensitive enough that, or insensitive enough that we could just let it go for a month?
I don't think it's a big deal. Yeah, and I also don't think it's a problem at all, by the way. I mean, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Very
things
good.
that are favorable things in terms of proving the disclosure, but we can certainly wait till next month if folks want to do that.
Sounds.
But Lisa, when are you leaving?
I am leaving soon. You guys, I'm taking another position.
Where are you going?
I'm going to go and work for the state and Office of Administrative Hearings over there and be an administrative law judge for them. I'm actually going to work with Terry's charming and delightful wife, Cher Mandela. And I'll be leaving pretty soon.
I didn't know you were married to Cheryl. I'm in for OAH all the time. So Lisa, I look forward to seeing you
Yeah,
in that
I'll see
capacity.
you, Joan. Yeah, I think it'll just be, I'm going to learn a lot, I think, from those folks. They've got a really fantastic team and kind of ready to start taking on some different kinds of issues. But I will tell you, I'm going to miss this board an awful lot because I love this group. So my last day, I think my first day over there is like April 4th, and I'm probably going to finish here, take some leave in the month of March. Like right now, my last kind of official day in the office is March 1st, but I think that might slip. I might come back at the end of the month. But anyway, I probably won't be at the next board meeting.
Well, I think that makes it time sensitive then, and I would move to amend the agenda to address this issue.
I would second
And
that.
I'm sorry, I don't recall the name, the last, well, it's regarding the superintendent.
Yes.
Yes.
And remember, it was about ACS having a contract with the school district to do, to provide telecom services and whatnot. I talked with David Whiting, who is the purchasing, I think the senior purchasing guy over and contract person over at ESD, and the person that we've dealt with on a variety of these things. And he always signs these disclosure forms and whatnot. And he confirmed that the superintendent. Yes.
Can we have the board vote on the motion to the agenda
I'm so
before
sorry.
going into it? Thank you.
My brain's
And I think
gone.
it needs a second. Yeah.
So I think I heard a motion and a second, right? Did we have a second to that motion?
I seconded it. At least I attempted to.
All right. So all those in favor of adding that to the agenda, and we'll just sort of, I guess we'll make that 6A, right? So we'll make that. So we'll make that the first item of unfinished business that we'll attend to. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. All right. Very good. Okay. So we're on the agenda. We're at 6 sub A. So Lisa, go.
So Dave Whiting confirmed that the superintendent's last day is going to be the 30th of June, and that all of these telecom contracts are really just competitive bid types of things. And they kind of, Becky will be pleased to hear this, that they go back and forth over periods of time between GCI and ACS. I can't, he said he didn't know exactly how many years the contracts were good for, but they're not like annual type things, but the superintendent has absolutely nothing to do with, which selection is made for which service provider. So I think it's a completely fine disclosure.
All right, very good.
Not concerned.
Any questions for Lisa on that?
Nope.
All right, so do we have a motion to then accept that disclosure that we got from the superintendent?
I move that we accept the disclosure from Superintendent Bishop.
Second?
I will second.
Discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no? All right, very good. That motion passes. Lisa, thank you for looking in for that. I do appreciate your effort to push it off to the next meeting when you would not be here. But no, we got you. I'm glad we
Yeah, I did the work. Yeah.
struck while the iron was hot, like Lisa was here. Okay, very good. So that takes us on to 6A. So why don't we, I think we should move into executive session to discuss that one. So do we have a motion to move into executive session?
Mr. Chair, if I could get clarification from Ms. Carmichael if it's deliberative or executive, and that just matters about how we are going to record the next session.
Yes, and it sounds like that he's requesting executive session, and under the old code language, which is where this recording language came from that Dee would always refer to, I did find the old code language, and under the old code language, executive session is recorded and deliberative sessions are not. And the code sort of makes the distinction between like a fact-finding investigative process for executive session, which is recorded, and then the decision-making deliberative process, which is not recorded. But once again, that was using language under the old code. And Lisa and I talked about that. I would like to do some research further into that. And there might be other attorneys in our office that have done research into that to find out sort of what the law says about recordings and executive privilege versus deliberative. But anyway, I think it would be good for now to just go with the past practice and to continue with the past practice and to go with what the old code language provided, which was to record executive sessions.
All right, that sounds good. So what's people's sense then? Is this matter an executive session, or is it going to be a deliberative session kind of discussion? I think it might be a deliberative session kind of discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Jennifer, are you okay with that? So, we've gone back and forth about whether we first have to go to executive session and then go to deliberative session. That was what I was setting us up to do. Can we just go directly to deliberative session?
This is Megan. Again, I'm sorry. I don't believe the code got into that detail. The old code, I don't believe, got into that level of detail about which came first. But I don't know. I'm sorry. Did it interrupt, Jennifer?
No, Megan, please interrupt. I was just going to say, I believe that the board decided at its last meeting, or perhaps the meeting before, that you were comfortable moving directly into deliberative session, which is certainly easier from a record keeping perspective.
Let's do that then. So do we have a motion to move into deliberative session?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So, and going to 6A, request for it. Do we think we're ready to deliberate on that request, or do we need to gather more information relative to that request? Because I think the former may be executive. No, the former would be deliberative and the latter would be executive. So if we have everything we need, I agree that we're ready to go to executive session.
Do you mean deliberative session?
No, yeah, deliberative session. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, my sense is that there might be some information that might be pretty confidential, and that might help us make a decision about this opinion. That's my sense about what's happening here, and that all sounds pretty deliberative to me.
I think it's deliberative. I think we have information. I think we have information that is pretty relevant to how we go forward with this. And I think you guys are going to want to hear that. And if it turns out that there's more that we need, then maybe we can take a different course at that point. But I think we should share some information with folks.
All right.
So we have a motion then. Motion for deliberative session?
Yeah, I move to go into deliberative session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No? All opposed? No. All right, motion passes. So Madam Clerk, could you please move us into deliberative session?
Okay, Mr. Chair, you are recording an open session.
All right, so we're back in open session. Do we have a motion regarding request for advisory opinion 2021-8?
I move that we table that request for the time being.
Second,
I'll second it.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? All right, motion passes and that request for advisory is tabled. Ethics complaint, next item of business, ethics complaint for potential violation 2021-14. Do we have a motion regarding that?
Mr. Chair, I move that we move that to our next meeting, or if we are holding a special meeting, potentially put that on the calendar for the special meeting.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? All right, very good. That motion passes then, and that will be, so we'll place that on to our next meeting. Item C, confidentiality of complaints under AMC. Megan, I think this is what we talked about at our last meeting in terms of protecting the confidentiality of the identity of complainants. Is that one?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and I think as long as we don't name
Yeah.
names, I think we can do that in open session. And I wanted this back on the agenda just to make sure, and I think we did that all right, but just to run it past Aisha and Joan. I don't think you were here when we sort of made that decision, but the idea was, and this is a departure from past practice, but the idea was that our general policy, if it's feasible and provided that it doesn't create significant procedural unfairness to the complainant, to the respondent, but that our general policy would be to protect the confidentiality of the respondent's identity. Meaning, among other things, that is, as if we brought a respondent in and gave them the copy of the complaint and gave them information about that our general policy would be to be redacting the name of the complainant and things like that, unless the situation was such that we felt that without knowing that name, it would be unfair to the respondent in being able to present sort of their side of the story.
And I think that our conclusion was that aligns with the code provision, right, which is subsection 115.160E that says the board shall protect the confidentiality of complainants or witnesses coming before the board, except insofar as may be necessary to enable the board to carry out its duties.
I'm just gonna devil's advocate it a bit. I'm sorry if you've held this conversation before. I'm in what I do for a living every day. What is key to my performing my role is to ensure that respondents receive due process. I'm talking in an administrative hearing context, so that's a little bit different here. I kind of like your general exception to this, but one thing that I've noticed in kind of my brief time here, and you might have I'm certain you have better experience, is I'm concerned that people use the Ethics Act in a retaliatory fashion. And there's a lot of one-upsmanship. And at a certain point, if we're getting a complaint from someone that we know just through the news and the press has animosity toward this other person, I think that's fair for the respondent to know that. And that may fall under the exception that you're talking about. But
yeah, and that was
raising those two things.
That was really the tension that we talked about extensively last month, because I think we had the same challenge. We were like, well, in certain instances, like we want, if you see something unethical happening and you are still a municipal employee, we don't I think the idea was for us to not immediately turn around and tell your supervisor who you just complained about to the ethics board that you have pointed out the unethical thing they're doing so that they can figure out a reason to fire you, right? But the opposite situation is your situation where someone's just, you know, filing spurious complaints against someone to try as a political weapon. And so we were trying to figure out what is the interpretation of the code that accommodates both of those scenarios and allows for an instance where we would protect the complainants. We don't automatically turn the complainant's name over to the respondent because there's that situation where you're complaining about the fact that you saw your boss do something and you read the code also says on its face, right, the complaint is confidential, and so we think that we at least need to tell people before we in any way disclose their name, because we see people I would read that and think, okay, I'm going to go file a complaint about my boss, and they're not, it's going to be confidential. But then also accounts for, again, like it allows for the flexibility to say in a situation like the one you raised, we may need to disclose the respondent's name or the complainant's name for the respondent to adequately respond and say, well, the reason that person filed this is because we have X, Y, and Z argument outside of this room. So this is what we were round and round on this last month because it was exactly the issue that we were trying to deal with.
Yeah, but we also receive complaints that are essentially like character assassinations, and we just don't accept them, right? We just say, sorry, we're not accepting this at all. And then we just don't have to deal with it.
Well, usually because those people aren't clever enough to actually file things that constitute an ethics violation. They're just like, this person's a bad person. And you're like, well, that is really not. Like,
exactly right. And then when that happens, you just say, well, this is nothing that we're going to deal with. And we also have that capacity too.
And in those cases, confidentiality holds because even when we, write our letter and send that out, we don't name names and we don't publish anything about it. So the question is sort of like, once we accept something for an investigation, again, the past practice and the code actually says, like, one of the first things you did was you gave a copy of the complaint to the respondent, and we didn't redact anything. In part, Dee's view was really with you, Jen, and that sort of like, due process requires that the respondent know who the complainant was, in part to help them prepare their defense, right? So it was all sort of like a due process kind of argument. But, I think, Becky's raised really good points too, that, certainly the code's not written that way for starters anymore. And then two, there is this sense of, while we don't want to ever create substantial unfairness to a respondent, at the same time, there is something to the idea that the code, one, it's probably good public policy to allow people to file complaints with some sense that their identity is not going to be immediately revealed. And that actually is a pretty decent reading of the way the code's written right now, right? And I think you're right. And I think, Becky, you make a really good point that I think you're right. I think most people reading the code would think that if they filed a complaint, that all things being equal, their identity would not be revealed to the respondent.
I can see the due process argument that we should change it, but I think I would say we should recommend a code change for exactly that reason, that I just don't think it's fair to, again, even as an attorney, I would read that and say, I'm going to file a complaint and you guys are going to keep it confidential. And if you were like, well, we kept it confidential from everybody except the person that you complained about, yeah. I would read that as a code violation. So.
But we also want to be a board where people feel safe about, giving ethical complaints to us as well. If there are ethical violations happening, and they don't feel safe about declaring them to us, then we're never going to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no language right on the complaint form with big letters that say confidential. Yeah, I agree that there may be some reasons not to keep it confidential, but right now, the way everything is, I'd be quite annoyed as a complainant if my name went to the respondent during an investigation. And I think it's also due process concerns might be lessened a little bit because this isn't actually like an open court case. So it's annoying, I'm sure, as a respondent to defend yourself against potential ethics violation. But if you haven't done it and it's a nuisance complaint, most of these are relatively simple to come before the board and say, no, actually, this is what happened. I mean, to me, it's not, yeah, I think
And I think what we talked about last time was that in the instance, what is a procedural matter, if someone did allege, like someone alleged something that did constitute an ethics violation where we thought we're going to want to potentially issue a public opinion here that has a reputational impact or an employment impact on this person, in that instance, 100%, before we could do that, we would need to go to the complainant and say, for us to do this, we need you to be willing, we are going to have to disclose your name. So for us to proceed, we'd allow the complainant to make a decision so that they, at least when it were notified that we were going to now make their name at least partially public as part of, that's what I at least could gathered from our conversation, that there would be instances where we thought we could start to investigate without disclosing a person's name, but that if there would be instances where potentially we would have to, and we would then notify the person. So we weren't just like, oh yeah, on Wednesday, we decided we were going to put your name all over these things that we handed to the person you complained about, and also put an opinion that we put on the website. Like,
I think that's a good balance. Makes sense.
Joan, you okay with that?
Yeah, does it need any more motion practice, or is it?
No, we went ahead and we passed the motion. I just wanted to make sure that we were with 4 people, I think, but 3, I was a little uncomfortable. We went ahead and passed it just to have it on the books, because I think in part we needed to make a decision about this particular, about the case. But with you 2 here today, I just wanted to run it past and make sure that it didn't provide too much heartburn. And again, I think it makes a good point. We can assess it on a case-by-case basis, and when those times arise where people are thinking, boy, I'm starting to worry about the fairness here, and then we can have that discussion. And Becky, I think you give us a good mechanism to reach out and make sure that we at least give notice to the complainant before we share their identity with the respondent. All right, good. Well, if people are okay, we don't need a new motion for that one. Then let's just move on then. Next, election of chair and vice chair. So we need to do this yearly. Sometimes we do it yearly. Sometimes we don't do it yearly. But we need to have this. We need to have this election. And I am going to step down as chair. So I've been chair for several years, and it is time to step down. I have devised a series of challenges that the 4 of you will need to engage in as competition to see which of you is strongest in terms of integrity and strength. Actually, it's a Festivus kind of thing. And so
virtual thumb wrestling.
Personally, I'm going to go ahead and dribble. Personally, I am going to nominate Becky to take my place as chair. She's been around the longest. She, as having been both on the board previously and been, municipal attorney, she's got a lot of knowledge and insight, both about our past practice and about how a lot of these mechanisms work within the city. She knows the code very well. So that's going to be my nomination for who I think would be. Not that any of you all, you could all do obviously a bang-up job, but that's the person I'm going to nominate. Any other nominations?
How do we second, thumbs up, vote?
Yeah.
How do we do this?
Well, usually if there's no other nominations, we usually just do a vote then if people are happy with that. But if there's I don't think we've ever actually had a full-blown, and I guess if you wanted to, we could have a campaign period. We could just do a whole bunch of things. But is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who wants the job? Anyone else who?
Becky, are you willing to take the job?
yeah, I mean, Terry emailed me about this beforehand, and my caveat was, if I can't convince you to stay, then yes, I'm happy to accept the nomination. You're a fantastic chair, Terry, and it saddens me that you don't want to be chair anymore. So I hope you aren't in any other way thinking about stepping back from the board more fully. So I hope this is not a you segueing out kind of move, because again, you're a fantastic chair, and it will be big shoes to fill. But if you are set on not being chair, then I'm willing to accept the nomination. It's provided that it comes with a gavel that I would like to use during the meetings.
The Nancy Pelosi size gavel?
Well, in person, Terry always had a gavel. He would.
Well, yeah, when we're back in person, we've got a gavel, right? We'll be back to gavel and snacks, and oh yeah, it's going to be great times, post
You have
COVID.
like a knee pedal and a guitar. I feel like you should have been able to improvise something behind you there, Terry.
I know, I think I have a gavel at home somewhere, which I think is
Oh, there you
actually
go.
Oh, yeah.
award from Race Judicata. Remember how that running race used to give out? I think I have one of those somewhere. I'll dig it up. But it's a long way of saying yes, I'm willing to accept the nomination.
Right on. Well, thank you, Becky. Yeah, and I'm planning on sticking around. I mean, the good news, the good news is on top of everything else that I do, and like you have kids and all that kind of thing. I've gotten a contract to write a book, which has been really exciting, and it's great stuff. And I just had a meeting, yet another meeting with my editor this morning, saying, "Hey, where's the first 3 chapters that were due last month?" Right? And I'm like, about that. And I start telling her all the things that I'm doing in my life that are preventing me everything. And so being chair doesn't require a whole bunch of extra time, but one, I need to trim back some of my time commitments. And 2, I just sort of felt like both because of my time pressures, and Lisa can totally attest to this, and Dee would totally attest to this, and because of who I am very much a philosopher at heart. So I'm just not a detail person. I'm not a good schedule person. I'm not a kind of good get back to you kind of person, right? There are days where I look at my phone and I'm like, whoa, someone texted me 3 days ago. I hope that wasn't important. Hi, Dee, what's going on? Right? I think we're, at a point where, that someone who's got hopefully a little more time and is a little bit more dispositionally, got their stuff together, as far as that kind of stuff goes. And so, I mean, that's why I think any of you would be better than me at the job, and as far as,
Terry, a comment and a question. I think you're dispositionally awesome as the chair, but I know Becky will be awesome in her own way as well. But then the question I have is, what's the book about? It must be a book about ethics.
Professional ethics. It's kind of cool. Not to take up our time, but it's a workbook, right, man? So, I already have a textbook. I already have a book that I wrote on, but it's a workbook. And what it does is it takes students through a series of cases. So it's all case study. It's case study, asks the student a series of, like, what's your reaction to this case? What did you think about this part? And what it's doing is it's teasing out of them, hopefully, almost in this kind of Socratic way, that at the end of each chapter, the question should be leading enough that, look, now, what did you get out of going through these cases? You should have gotten the following key points about ethics, or about a particular ethical theory, or in the second half of the book, about specific professional situations and what should have raised the red flag. And if it did raise the red flag, now let's talk about why that was a red flag, and get them from sort of like intuitions to sort of formalized, principled understanding. We'll see. That's the
cool.
I hope it's cool. We'll see.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, we will see. The cases are cool. I mean, I've got a bunch over the years. I've collected some wild cases, and so it's, hopefully it'll be cool. So, is there a motion then? Is there a motion to select Becky as the board's chair?
Yeah, I move that we select Becky as the board's chair.
Second?
Second?
Discussion. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. All right. The motion passes. And Becky, I don't actually even have a gavel. I hand the gavel off to you as our new chair. And as new chair, the first thing you need to do is get a vice chair. I don't even know who our vice chair is. Becky, were you the vice chair, or was?
No, Jack was the vice chair.
Yeah, I said that Jack was the vice chair, right? So Becky, you'll need to.
We literally hand off in the middle of the meeting. I guess the assembly does that when they reorganize too, don't they? And literally in the middle of the meeting, change chairs.
They do. They switch seats and everything.
Wow, goodness, I wasn't prepared to have to assume the role in the midst of the meeting. I should give you a warning at this time that I actually need to leave 5 minutes early today. So I'm failing already in my role as chair. I have a parent-teacher conference that I have to attend for my child who is getting an S- in self-control in the classroom. That said, though, do we have any nominations for vice chair? Anyone like to self-nominate?
I think I've been around the next longest and I would accept a nomination, but I'm also more than happy to not be nominated if someone else wants to take it on. So in the most tepid way possible, I self-nominate, which is weird, but anyway.
I nominate Aisha. There we go. How's that sound?
Yeah, I like that too.
I would second that as well. I think, Aisha, you'd be a fantastic vice chair.
With the caveat that I have zero idea what the vice chair does, but I'll ask Jack for his notes.
Well, the good is the vice chair really does nothing until the chair is gone. Then you are the chair. And so today, when Becky abandons us, you will take over and you'll have to salvage what's left of the meeting.
Also, I think you're like first on the list for, I feel like, because I think I was vice chair once years ago. Maybe for David or maybe for you, Terry. And I think what it mostly meant was when we had to like go to the assembly or do something else. I was the first, it was like, you're the vice chair, you're going to come too. So.
Oh, good. I withdraw my self-nomination.
You're next in line to be hit by each requirement for the board. Okay.
Wonderful. I also have to leave 5 minutes early. So we're
I
all on the same page.
I think we have a motion in a second, because I think I seconded the motion. So do we all in favor of electing Aisha as vice chair for the board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none. Congratulations, Aisha. We have a chair and a vice chair. Now I'm gonna have to get the agenda out and figure out where I was. Look, I had pulled up ethics complaint with 2021-12 and 1. Whew. All right, so next on our agenda then is 2021 ethics complaint for potential violation 2021-12. And I have to pull that up to remind myself of what that concerns, but I would say we need to have a motion to go into deliberative session in order to consider that.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, do you need us to actually vote on that motion, or can we at this point move into deliberative session?
I do think you need to vote on it, Madam Chair.
All in favor of the motion to move into deliberative session?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into deliberative session in order to consider ethics complaint 2021-12. All right, we're back on the record. Do we have a motion for how we'd like to proceed with ethics complaint for potential violation 2021-12?
Madam Chair, I move that we elect invite the complainant to our next either special or regularly scheduled meeting to address the complaint, and that in the meanwhile, Ms. Toussaint, well, that's not really a motion. I'll stop it at that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And just to place it on the record, we did want to, I think, ask Ms. Toussaint to, in the interim, circulate a relevant previous opinion of the board for consideration by the board in examining and assessing ethics complaint for potential violation 2021-12. Okay, so then we're on to ethics complaint for potential violation 2022-1. Do we have a motion to move into deliberative session?
I move to move into deliberative session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hearing no opposition, Madam Clerk, could you move us into deliberative session on 2022-1? Okay, we have a motion, how we'd like to proceed with 2022-1.
I move that the board accept this notice of potential violation for consideration and invite the respondent to appear at the board's next meeting for an interview.
I'll second that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's how, and so can we ask Megan or Lisa to reach out to the complainant and just talk with him about the confidentiality of his complaint before we proceed to reach out to the respondent?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. All right, so that's our agenda for today. The last item I wanted to touch on before we wrap is the potential need for a special meeting. And my current thinking is that that may depend on whether or not Mr. Smith elects. I think we could handle 2 people at one meeting, but potentially not 3. So I would, with the agreement of the board, say we should pick up potential scheduling of that mid-month once we know how Mr. Smith would like to proceed.
Agreed.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn it. Bye.
Second.
All right. Stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Guys, I'll miss you.
Jackie.
Bye.
Lisa.